I'm over here sitting on this hill that I plan to be shooting from, and I definitely have hogs on the property. I definitely got hogs on the property. At night I can hear them, and when I take a look at the ground, I just walk over here. There are some pretty big tracks. Got some pretty big tracks. These hogs, their feet are going like 2 or 3 inches into the mud, and so it's a pretty big hog. I got several of them all over the place, and they're definitely out here on the property. And I was taking a look at everything, seeing how everything's going, and I still can't bring corn out here. There are still patches of soil out here that are just still wet. There are still places out here that are still wet, and I don't want to get stuck out here. If I get stuck out here, that's going to be a big headache. And so I'm sitting on this hill. This is the hill that I plan to be shooting from, and that's the giant pile of dirt over there. That's the giant pile of dirt, and I would say it's probably somewhere between. It's probably about 50 yards. It's probably about 50 yards, and it's a good little spot. I definitely have hogs on the property. I got myself a cup of coffee, and so and this is the big old lake. Big old lake over here. I got this big old pool of water over here. And so I figured, the whole thing about it is, and I actually was thinking about this morning, but, I'm sitting out here just hanging out, and this is what I feel like doing, so this is what I'm going to do. And even though I'm out here, I'm still making money, right? My cattle are still making me money. I'm still making money. I got my cattle fed this morning, and everything's been squared away, and I'm still making money. And this all ties back to the idea of the whole thing about FU money, right? FU money. The pools of money, and I do very well for myself, and I'm on the up and up, and the longevity of a business. Right, the cattle business will probably be around forever. Money's not an opinion. I've always said money's not an opinion. Nobody cares what you think. When it comes down to it, what are you going to do about it, right? You're going to go and make more money than me. Let's see it. If you did manage to do that, I would be very happy for you, and I would love to shake your hand, all right? If you have no money and you have a bunch of opinions, and, and you're a massive pile of problems, and you don't get to the 10% mark your entire life, then that's not good, okay? That's not good. All right, it just is what it is. All right, if you can't handle the truth, then go somewhere else. Have some dignity. All right, have some dignity. All right, I've always said you're not gonna find out who you are until your life is hard. Okay, you're not gonna find out who you are until your life is hard. Nobody cares about your opinion. All right, what are you gonna do about it? All right, let's see it. Are you going to go and make more money than me? I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to come and find me in the bush? What are you going to do, right? Have fun with that. I legitimately spend my entire life working, all right? And I did very well for myself. I do very well for myself, all right? I don't, it just is what it is, okay? Money's not an opinion. Let's see it, okay? If you manage to go and make more money than me, I'm very happy for you. I would love to shake your hand, all right? And granted that you're not some prick, all right? And that's the whole thing about my situation too. The average person's not a saint. I'm not a saint. I've made my peace with it. I mean, I don't, it just is what it is. I'm not a saint, I'm also not a malicious person, okay? I don't strap bombs onto babies to make money, okay? I don't sell fentanyl to make money, okay? I don't kidnap people to make money. I'm in the cattle business, okay? And I feed people. And if the cattle business was easy, everybody would be doing it, all right? And at the end of the day, it just is what it is. Money's not an opinion. Money's not an opinion. I actually make money. I do very well for myself, all right? And You know, it just is what it is, okay? And I would highly suggest, because the whole thing about it is, like, if you have a bunch of opinions and you have no money, I mean, what are you going to do with that? You know, what are you going to do with that? You have a bunch of opinions, you think highly of yourself, you're losing money. And the whole thing about, and here's the thing. Like, if you're in the grain market right now, if you are, growing grain right now, if you're growing grain right now and you're losing money, don't kill yourself, okay? Don't go and kill yourself over it, Don't sell your soul to the devil because of money, all right? Don't sell your soul to the devil for anything, especially not money, okay? Don't go and kill yourself over it, all right? If you're in the grain market, it's you're not gonna figure out who you are until you. The thing about it is, nobody, you don't know who you are. Nobody will know who anybody is until things get hard. Okay, when your life gets hard, that's when you find out who you are. All right, have some dignity. All right, have some accountability. Have some dignity. Don't go turn yourself and don't go be a little girl about it. All right, nobody's coming to help you. Okay, you're gonna have to help yourself. Don't sell your soul to the devil. All right. At the end of the day, you can always make more money. All right. Even if you do bankrupt, what does it matter? You can always make more money. All right. You can go, find yourself a leased property and, try again. All right. Don't get your panties in a wad about it. All right. Have some dignity. Have some accountability. Have some, have some character. All right. You're not going to figure out who you are until your life gets hard. And if, the moment your life gets hard, you turn into a little girl, then, I mean, it is what it is. All right. When your life gets hard, that's when you figure out who you are. And the whole thing about the cattle market is, from what I see in the cattle market, downwards momentum is going to scare a lot of people. Downwards momentum will scare a lot of people. At the peak of every market is the margin of delusion, right? At the peak of every market, everyone's thinking, oh my God, this thing can only get better, right? This thing can only get better. This thing's gonna just keep going up forever, and everybody's gonna be rich, right? That's the peak of effectively the peak of every market. And then when things start to go downhill, the first thing that people do is what? The first thing that people do is think that it's going to go back up. Oh, well, if I just wait, the thing, if you do wait, the thing will probably go back up. But, it's the cycle of, I forget what they call it, but there's a graph about this. And it's like when things are very low, everybody, when the prices are very low, everybody's kind of upset about it, and everybody's about it, and oh my God, and then when the thing starts going up, it's like, oh well, this isn't gonna work out. And then when things just keep going up, it's like, oh man, this thing is just keep going. And then near the very top, a little bit away from the top, everyone tries to pile into the market. And then, oh my God, everyone's going to make money and everyone's going to do extremely well. And this thing's going to the moon. And then it goes up a little bit more. And everyone is, oh my God, we're going to the moon. And then it starts going downhill. And when it starts going downhill, everyone goes, oh, well, there's a graph about this. And I forget what the graph is called, but it's more or less when things start going downhill, everyone just kind of, it's like, oh, well, this is just a little bit of a whatever. And maybe we'll turn this around here pretty soon. And then it just keeps going down. And then, it's like all the hope fades away from the market and people start freaking out. And then when the prices bottom out, everyone is like, oh, well, this is, I lost all my money. So, whatever. And, and things start turning around. And when things start turning around, everybody just, a majority of people just kind of, don't believe it's possible, and then all over again, just rinse and repeat forever, okay? And you don't want to be in a situation where you are making choices out of desperation, and you don't want to be in a situation where you're making choices out of desperation and delusion, okay? You don't want to be in a situation where you are making choices out of desperation and delusion. You know, when I take a look at the cattle market, what do I see? Well, cattle are equitable. The equitable evaluation of cattle is effectively set by the commodity market, and the commodity market is a global market. It's a very stable market, and cattle will probably be worth something from now until infinity. It's a very good asset, okay? Commodity cattle are a very good asset. And the whole thing about commodity type cattle, here's the thing about commodity type cattle: number 1 to 1.5 type medium large frame animals. And maybe this will help you understand this more. And this is also why I say, like here in this local area, beef cattle are effectively there. There are 4 major breeds of beef cattle. Okay, you got the Angus type cattle, you got the Hereford type cattle, you got the Charolais type cattle, and then you got the Brahma type cattle. And more or less, those are the 4 major breeds. And this is also a good idea of the commodity market. And this is also what I mean, by the beef business is not some fancy pants business. Effectively, 90% of all of the beef that ends up at a USDA plant will end up as choice or prime. All right, and 10 to 15% of all beef at the beef plant will end up as a select or lower. All right, select, or and I forget what the other type of beef is, but effectively 90% of all beef at the USDA plant will end up as a choice or a select, not select. Select is the lowest. It will end up as choice or prime. 90% of all beef, 90% of all beef at the USDA plant will end up grading choice or prime. And effectively, if you just more or less, if you have a beef animal, and and this is also, unless you're like in some kind of a situation where you actually know how to make money off of raising straight number 1 type cattle, if you actually know how to make money, like if you actually know how to make money like that, running straight number 1 plus type cattle, maybe you're achieving very, very, very high numbers of prime. You're actually going over the 10% average on your cattle, and you're doing whatever, you're marketing them to make money on the extra money. Unless you're doing that, it just makes more sense to be in the commodity market. All right, it makes more sense to be in the commodity market. The commodity market, and the thing about raising commodity type cattle is that effectively all of the cattle are gonna grade, all of them. Granted that you're not an idiot, right? As long as your cattle are somewhat raised properly. Your cattle are somewhat raised properly. They put on at least 2 to 2.5 pounds a day. My cattle probably put on about 3 pounds a day. But as long as your cattle put on about 2 or 2.5 pounds a day, you can almost be guaranteed that you really want to go for about 2.5 pounds. Okay, minimum of 2.5 pounds. And if your cattle are putting on 2.5 pounds a day, and you got yourself some kind of a beef animal, chances are you got yourself a commodity type animal. All right, and that and this is also why I don't go to the sale barn and just look for straight number 1 type cattle. It's just a waste of time. Even if I ended up with straight number 1 type cattle, I'm not gonna go in out of my way to market them for extra money. Right? That's just a waste of my time. I'd rather be in the commodity market. And effectively, 90% of all beef that ends up at a USDA plant grades prime or grades choice. Grades prime or choice. Okay. But here's the thing: if farming commercial type cattle, if raising commercial cattle was easy, if it was legitimately easy to do this, everybody would be doing it. And when I talk about this stuff, I'm not making this up. I legitimately do not know anybody doing 10% of what I do in terms of farming. I don't know anybody even doing 10%. All right, and I actually make more money as a cattleman than anybody on the planet makes doing just about anything. All right, and it's by a lot. It's not even some small amount of money. It is a very large amount of money. All right, I effectively make enough. I legitimately make FU money. I don't, if I want to sit here and look at the lake for an hour, while I'm sitting here looking at the lake for an hour, I'm still making money. All right, I'm still making money. It's whatever to me. All right, right now I'm probably averaging almost $1,200 a day. Very soon, within 5 to 7 months, I will be averaging over $2,500 a day. I will more than double the amount of money that I'm making for myself over the next 7 to 8 months. Over the next 5 to 7 months, excuse me. Over the next 5 to 7 months, I will more than double the amount of money that I'm making for myself. All right, and even at $1,200 a day, it's effectively enough money for me to do whatever the heck I feel like. And this is the thing about money. I've always said, like, if money is not an opinion, all right? And if it comes down to it, if you make no money, then you make no money, all right? I actually make the money, and it is what it is. All right, I legitimately make enough money where I would legitimately consider it FU money. All right, it doesn't matter. Even if I had nothing, I could just redo everything in 30 seconds. What does it matter? All right, I genuinely make FU money. You don't like it, what are you going to do about it? You're going to sue me? Have fun with that. All right? What are you going to do about it? You're going to come find me in the brush? Have fun with that. All right? It doesn't matter to me. Even if I had nothing, I could just redo everything. It wouldn't take me but 30 seconds. But I legitimately make so much money that it doesn't matter. I can effectively do anything on the entire planet. And and even right now, even when I was sleeping, I was making myself more money. And I'm set to make astronomically more money. All right, I am set to make just substantially more money. I may legitimately end up doubling my income over the next 5 to 7 months. My animals right now, I'm just going to kind of leave them alone for another month or two. I just kind of want to give them the good life. When these animals, when they go to a feed yard, when these animals go to a feed yard, I don't really like the commercial feed yard business. I don't really like the commercial feed yard business. They got these animals put up in a little pen. A lot of these barns, if you take a if you go and you take a look at these barns, a lot of them kind of make you kind of queasy. If it was up to me, I would raise the animal all the way until the animal was ready to be harvested for beef. I would in terms of the quality of life that the animals get to have and everything, I would much rather be responsible for taking care of the animals until the animals went to the meat factory, until the animals got slaughtered for beef. And I would much rather do that, but it just is what it is. I mean, if I don't sell my animals at 800, 1,000 pounds, then where do I sell fed cattle, right? You don't really see a lot of people selling fed cattle, and I am looking around for opportunities to sell fed cattle. If I can find places here and there, I would be willing to do it. All right, I would be willing to do it. I got such a large amount of land right now that I could raise these animals. I do very well for myself. I got such a large amount of land. I could easily raise these animals to fed cattle weight very, very, very cost effectively. I could do it, and I'm sure that my animals would grade very well. My animals put on, even at 500 pounds, they put on almost 3 pounds a day, and so. But that's the situation that I'm in. I do very well for myself. I make a lot of money. The amount of money that I'm making is going up very quickly. And in terms of the amount of money that I make, it is legitimately FU money. All right. It doesn't, it's like, what are you gonna, I mean, and here's the thing. The amount, the whole thing about, me when I work, I don't work for money. In terms of it just is what it is. I actually feel a moral obligation to keep working. It's like I was given, and my whole thing about it is, and I keep myself right with God. I feel like the only time that you can ever end up in a situation where your life is hard, if you legitimately ever end up in a situation where your life is hard, the only reason that happens is because you lost your way with God. All right, that's what I believe. Life isn't hard. All right, life isn't hard when you're right with God. All right, life isn't hard. And and I feel like without God I would not have made it, and I do very well for myself, and I do feel an obligation. I feel a moral obligation to keep working. I do feel a moral obligation to keep working. I don't work for money. If I legitimately just liquidated everything that I had and put all the money in the S&P 500 and then went and worked myself a very basic job like fried chicken at Wingstop for 40 hours a week, I would, and I made a 7% return on my portfolio, I would still make over $100,000 a year. All right. And so, what does it matter? I don't work for money. My whole thing about it is that, in terms of a realistic sense, I feel a moral obligation to keep working. I believe it's my moral obligation to keep working. I feel like I have a responsibility to keep working. I do very well for myself, and I don't, the money's whatever. Even if I had nothing, I could redo everything. What does it matter? Money is a negligible thing. Money's negligible, okay? If you legitimately think that you need money to make money, I guarantee you that's a symptom of you being poor. But and if you're in the grain market right now, or if you're losing money, and you're in a financially hard spot or whatever, don't kill yourself over it. All right. Don't sell your soul to the devil because of money. All right. Have some dignity. All right. Have some character. All right. Have some accountability. All right. You can always make more money. All right. But you're not going to be able to make more money if you're repeatedly kicking yourself in the dick 24/7. All right. If you're legitimately in a situation where you're digging yourself a bigger hole all the time, you're kicking yourself in the dick repeatedly, then you're not going to be able to make more money, and you should probably stop kicking yourself in the dick. All right. All right. If you got, whatever it is, money is very simple. All right. Money is very simple. It's just a number on a piece of paper at the end of the day. And if that number is greater than zero, then that's good. All right. If you're losing money, the whole idea of losing money is that it doesn't matter how much money you have. You could have $50 billion and you could lose all of it, right? You could have $100 billion and you could lose all of it. You could have $50 billion and you could lose 500 million, right? Money's not complicated. All right, it's very simple. And you really want your financials to be in the positive all the time. All right. And when you think about money, it's an objective. It's just an objective. It is what it is. Okay. You want your financials to be in the positive. All right. Like me, I always invest my money first. And when I invest my money first, the reason that I do that is because I take the money and I trade the money for something that is equally as valuable as the money, but it's not money. All right. And the reason that I do that is because the asset, I can appreciate the value of the asset. All right. And, when I have that money, it's like, if I invest $5,000, and I reasonably believe that I can take that $5,000 to, and let's say, that I can take that $5,000 up to, up to $10,000, right? Or up to $8,000 to $10,000, then, if whatever, something happens and I lose $1,000, what does it matter? All right. It doesn't. I'll still end up with $8,000-9,000. Okay. I'll still have started off with $5,000 and ended up with $8,000 or $9,000. That's the whole idea of investing my money first. That's why I invest my money first. I don't leverage myself to the eyeballs to take to go out and, run a business. I always invest my money first, because if it's my money, if it's the money that I've made, even if I lose it, what does it matter? All right. We're not talking about some large amount of money. I'm not going to go and YOLO, 100, and, I'm not going to go and YOLO 100, every single dollar that I have and then some. Okay. Why would I do that? Okay. Realistically, in all honesty, once you start making about $8,000 a month, once you start making about $10,000 a month, I could legitimately live my entire life if I was not running my business. If I was not running my business, I could effectively pay for all of my bills with $4,000 a month. All right, if I was not running my business, that's how much my bills would cost me. My bills would cost me about $4,000 a month. All right, and the only thing that I do with the amount of money that I make is run my business with it. That's the only thing that I do. All right. There's legitimately no way that I could, it's not possible. I would legitimately like have to go and like buy 5 Lamborghinis. I would have to, go into, rent myself, or even buy myself some, some $2 or $3 million house. And then I would have to buy myself like 5 Lamborghinis, and then I would have to go gambling and drinking on the weekends. That's effectively what it would take for me to use the amount of money that I make. And I'm not going to do any of those things. Well, I may, but the thing about buying myself a $2 or $3 million house, it's like, if I'm sitting there, right? If I'm sitting there and I have $1 million put away, I have $1.5 million away, I have $2 million put away, and I'm still making myself $90,000 a month, then I might as well just buy the $2 or $3 million house. And the thing about buying a $2 or $3 million house is that if I buy a $3 million piece of land with a nice house on it, or I just go and I buy the land first and then I build my own house on it, I build the house that I want on it, that land will make me money. Okay, I can run cattle on that land and I can make money on it. Okay, and so it's whatever. Very, very, very soon. It won't take me very long. I think it'll take me less than a year. I will probably have about $1 million just sitting there. I will probably have about $1 million just sitting there, and I will be making myself over $100,000 a month. I may even be making myself over $150,000 a month. And if I just have $2 million sitting there, if I have $1 million sitting there, and I'm making $150,000 a month, then and if I want to buy a $2 or $3 million house, then I'll buy myself a $2 or $3 million house. All right. At that point, it's whatever. But that's the thing about houses, right? I've talked about houses. If you look at if your whole idea of building wealth is to buy a house, if that's your big idea, oh my God, I would just be rich if I had a house, you're an idiot. All right, houses are a negative return asset. Houses are negative returns, and a very honest way to look at this is one day you will have to rebuild your entire house. One day the house that you have will be worth nothing. Every square inch of your house will have to be rebuilt at some point. It may be 200 years, it may be 250 years, but eventually you will have to rebuild every square inch of your house. And in terms of a realistic sense, your house, it doesn't produce anything. All right, your house does not produce anything unless you rent it out. All right, your house is just a dead asset. It's just there, okay? And I understand that it is equitable, but it doesn't do anything other than just give you a place to live, okay? Houses are a horrible asset, and they are a negative return asset over the long term. All right, and especially if you go and you buy yourself a house right now on a 6 or 7% interest rate, your house is not going to appreciate at 6 to 7% a year. All right, if you go and you take a loan right now and you buy a house and you take a 6% interest rate on that house, and let's say that you have a 20% down payment, so you don't pay PMI, but you still have a 6% interest rate on your house. Your house is not going to appreciate at 6% a year, okay? You will lose money on that house right out the gate. You will be losing money on that house every month that goes by because of your 6% interest rate. All right? Houses are a negative return asset. When interest rates were even 4%, people were still losing money on their houses, okay? But over the long term, if the appreciation of your house is 3% and you have a fixed rate at 4%, then sure, if you waited out 10 years, then the appreciation value of your house would would start to compound, and and et cetera, okay, and that you would have a flat interest rate on a fixed sum of money. and chances are you would, at that point, your appreciation value would exceed the the amount of money that you're paying in interest. But still, you still have to include property taxes. You still have to include maintenance costs. You still have to include, everything else that it costs to fix your house, okay? To keep your house running, and to keep your house from breaking down, right? And all that stuff adds up, property taxes and everything, okay? Houses are a horrible asset. All right, homes are a horrible asset. If you're legitimately convinced that you would just be rich if you could buy yourself a house, you're an idiot. All right, you're wasting your time. It's not going to work. Homes do not make money unless you rent them out, okay? I would think that the S&P 500 is a better investment. Right now, the S&P 500 is probably a better investment. But I've spoken about this whole thing, right? Like, if you're legitimately looking to get into the upper tiers of money, if you are looking to get into the very, 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 very top levels of money, the way that you do it is you need to understand that you can make money with assets. You need to understand that you can make money with money. You have to find a way to make money with assets, okay? That's how you get to the very top. That's what the people on the very top are doing. They're making money with money. That's effectively what I do, okay? And I've spoken about this whole thing. It's very, 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 very rare to find somebody who can make money with money. It's very rare. I mean, even me, I don't even know 10 people that can do it. And one of the people on the list is Warren Buffett. It's very rare to find people who can intentionally make money with money, who can systematically make money with money. It's very rare. You very rarely ever see it. All right, even me, it's less than 10 people that from what I have seen can actually do this. Making money with money, systematically making money with money. It's a very, very, very rare thing to find. Very, 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 very few people know how to do it. But that's also that's also how I ended up, making such a large amount of money, was because I was able to, utilize this skill set. And this is also why I say I have FU money, because even if I had nothing, money's an illusion to me. Everything costs me nothing. All right, I make money with money. Everything costs me nothing. If I put money into something, if I put $500 into something, I'll get $750 back. If I put $500 into something, I'll get $1,000 back. If I put $500 into something, I'll get $700 back. Nothing, everything costs me nothing. Money's an illusion to me, all right? Money, it's whatever. Money is negligible. Even if I had nothing, I could redo everything in 30 seconds. All right, I understand systematically how to make money with money. And so it's money's whatever to me. And I legitimately make FU money. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm not saying that to be malicious about it. If I want to sit here and look at my lake, if I want to sit here and look at this lake for an hour, then that's what I'll do. And I'll still make money while I'm doing it. All right. I legitimately make enough money to where it doesn't matter anymore. The amount of money that I make is effectively so large that everything, more or less, everything is just, other than super yachts or private jets, other than stuff like that, everything is effectively free to me. And in terms of the pools of money, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up with, and I've talked about the 3 pools of money. The money that I have in the deal, the amount of money that I make on a monthly basis, and the amount of money that I've made but I have not paid myself yet. So we'll say that that's pool number 1, 2, and 3. Pool number 1 will probably be about within about a year. Pool number 1 will be somewhere between $1 and $2 million. Pool number 2 will be about $80,000 to $100,000 a month. And pool number 3 will probably be about Well, pool number 3 and pool number 2 are about the same. It'll be about another $80,000 to $100,000 a month. So, you know, but pool number 3 will also get bigger as I reinvest the money. So, but you know, just all in all, I will probably end up in a situation where I have about, you know, about $1 million, just over $1 million in pool number 1. And if I have just over $1 million in pool number 1, if I have $1 million, $1.5 million in pool number 1, you know, I'll make you know, I'll be making myself almost $150,000 a month, and I will also have a 4th pool of money and a 5th pool of money as well. The 4th pool of money, you know that you know, I will end up with a 4th pool of money and a 5th pool of money as well. All right, and I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, but I can tell you, it's, you know, I am starting to ramp up the amount of money that I make, and the amount of money that I'm making is going up vertically. I am making a large amount of money, legitimate FU money.